The next morning, Peter told them, "I want to show you something important. Follow me." They followed him to the backyard where a big car was parked. Peter opened the door, and the old man stepped out, now without his glasses, his fake beard, and his wig. The brothers froze, their mouths opened wide. Their hearts nearly stopped. "Dad!" Michael stammered, "It can't be." Kelvin gasped. Mr. Henry stood tall, looking strong and healthy. His voice thundered, "Yes, it's me, your father. I was never sick, and I never perish. I wanted to know who truly loves me." Rose ran out from the kitchen and fell to her knees in tears. "Daddy," she cried, "I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." Mr. Henry gently lifted her up. "My daughter, I've already forgiven you. You learned the lesson." Then he turned sharply to Michael and Kelvin. "But you two, you never changed. Even when I was gone, your hearts were still full of greed." They both knelt down, shaking. "Dad, we're sorry. We didn't know you were alive. Please forgive us." Mr. Henry looked at them coldly. "You didn't know I was alive, yet you still lied, cheated, and pretended. You have broken my heart." He walked away quietly, leaving them crying on the floor. Later that evening, Mr. Henry gathered everyone in the living room. He said softly, "I did all this not to punish you, but to teach you. Money means nothing without love, care, and honesty." He smiled at Peter. "This man you once called a servant has shown more love and loyalty than all of you combined." Rose knelt and cried again. "Daddy, please give us one more chance." Mr. Henry looked at them, then said, "I'll think about it. But from today, remember, love cannot be faked, and greed always destroys peace." The house went silent. Tears flowed, hearts broke. But deep inside, something had changed forever. Days passed after Mr. Henry's shocking return. The house was quiet again, not because everything was fine, but because everyone was afraid. Rose tried to stay close to her father, helping him with chores and checking on him every morning. Michael and Kelvin, however, still couldn't believe what had happened. They were angry, ashamed, and jealous that Peter was still close to their father. Mr. Henry had forgiven them, but he hadn't restored their wealth yet. He wanted to be sure they had truly changed. One evening, Mr. Henry called Peter into his study. He said softly, "Peter, I want to test him one last time. I need to know who truly has a kind heart now." Peter listened carefully. Mr. Henry continued, "Tomorrow, I will announce that I'm starting a big charity project to help the poor and orphans. But secretly, I'll tell each of my children a different story to see what they'll do." Peter smiled knowingly. You want to see who will help others, and who will still think only about themselves. Mr. Henry nodded slowly. "Exactly. This time, their hearts will tell me the truth." The next morning, everyone gathered in the living room. Mr. Henry stood tall, looking healthier than ever. He cleared his throat and said, "I have decided to build a big charity center in the city, a place where poor children can go to school for free." Rose smiled brightly. "That's wonderful. Daddy." But Michael frowned slightly. "Father, do you really need to spend millions on that?" Kelvin added, "You could use that money to expand our business instead." Mr. Henry didn't show his disappointment. He just nodded quietly. Then he said, "I'll need someone to manage the charity. I'll decide who it will be soon." Everyone's eyes lit up, not because they wanted to help, but because they thought whoever managed it would handle a lot of money. That night, Mr. Henry called each child separately. He told Rose, "I'll give you $1 million to start the charity. But remember, this money is meant for the poor." He told Michael, "I'll give you $1 million to help me organize the charity event. You'll be in charge of the donations." And he told Kelvin, "I'll give you $1 million to prepare the land for the orphanage." But he secretly gave them fake checks that looked real. He wanted to see what they'd do when they believed the money was theirs. Rose immediately went to a nearby orphanage. She bought food, clothes, and books for the children. The next day, she brought some of them home to thank her father. They sang and hugged her, and tears filled Mr. Henry's eyes. "She passed," he whispered to himself. Michael, on the other hand, went to a luxury car shop. He told his friend, "Once this check clears, I'll buy that new Jeep. I deserve some comfort before I handle Dad's charity. Kelvin did worse. He went to a club, bragging to his friends. My father is back, and I'm rich again. Drinks for everyone. They laughed and celebrated all night. When both of them tried to cash their checks the next day, the bank said, "Sorry, this check is invalid." Later that evening, Mr. Henry gathered everyone again in the sitting room. Peter stood beside him with folded arms. Mr. Henry looked at each of them seriously. "I gave each of you $1 million. Tell me, what did you do with it?" Rose stepped forward. "I used it to feed the poor children. Father, they needed help more than I did." Mr. Henry smiled warmly. "Well done, my daughter." He turned to Michael. Michael stammered. I was planning to use it for the charity event, but the check didn't clear." Kelvin looked down. "Mine too. The bank said it was fake." Mr. Henry raised his voice. "It was fake because you failed. I wanted to see if you would think of others first, but you only thought of yourselves." The room went silent. Michael and Kelvin fell to their knees, crying. "We're sorry. Father, please, give us another chance." Mr. Henry's eyes were wet with tears, but his voice was firm. "No, my sons, I gave you so many chances. Only true love can pass the test of temptation." He turned to Rose and said, "You, my daughter, have proven that your heart is pure. From today, you will be in charge of all my businesses and my charity foundation." Rose gasped in shock. "Me, Daddy? But I don't deserve all that." He smiled. "You do, because you now understand what love truly means." Peter clapped softly with a smile. Michael and Kelvin couldn't bear it. They left the house in shame, their faces full of regret. Mrs. Linda cried and begged her husband, "Please forgive them. They are still our sons." Mr. Henry sighed deeply. "I will forgive them, but they must learn that money is not everything. Sometimes losing everything helps us find our hearts again." As the night grew quiet, Rose sat beside her father, resting her head on his shoulder. Mr. Henry whispered softly, "My day, this is the end of my test, but the beginning of a new lesson for all of us." He looked out the window at the stars. "I just hope one day your brothers will come home not for money, but for love." After the final test, the mansion became quiet again. Michael and Kelvin had left the house in shame, and for the first time in their lives, they had to survive on their own without money, without comfort, and without servants. Mr. Henry watched from a distance, but said nothing. He wanted life to teach them what words could not. Michael and Kelvin moved into a small one-room apartment in a poor neighborhood. They sold their expensive clothes just to buy food. Michael, who once drove fancy cars, started walking everywhere. Kelvin, who always laughed at poor people, now stood in long lines just to fetch water. One afternoon, Kelvin looked at his brother and said sadly, "Do you think Dad will ever forgive us?" Michael sighed deeply. "I don't know, but I wish we could start over. We were blind, brother, blinded by greed." They sat in silence, both lost in thought. Days turned into weeks. Their rich friends abandoned them. No one picked their calls anymore. For the first time, they understood how it felt to be alone, hungry, and forgotten. One evening, it rained heavily. The brothers had no food, no electricity, and no money left. Michael lay on the floor, weak and coughing. Kelvin covered him with an old blanket and whispered, "I wish we had just listened to Dad." Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Kelvin opened it, and there stood Peter, holding 2 food bags and a warm smile. "I heard you both were struggling," Peter said gently. "I brought you something to eat." Kelvin's eyes filled with tears. "Peter, after all we did to you, you're still helping us." Peter nodded. "Your father taught me to love, not to hate. Love heals more than money ever can." Michael cried quietly, "We don't deserve your kindness." Peter smiled. "That's the beauty of forgiveness. You don't have to deserve it. You just have to learn from it." He gave them the food and left, but his words stayed with him all night. The next morning, Michael woke up early. He looked at Kelvin and said, "Let's go home. Not for money, not for comfort, but to tell Dad we're sorry." Kelvin nodded with tears in his eyes. "Yes, we've learned our lesson." They walked a long distance under the hot sun until they reached their father's gate. The guards recognized them and quickly ran to tell Mr. Henry. When Mr. Henry came out and saw his son standing there, weak, dirty, and crying, his heart melted. They both fell to their knees. "Father, we are sorry. We were foolish. We let greed destroy our hearts. Please forgive us." Tears rolled down Mr. Henry's cheeks. He walked to them and helped them up. "My sons, I have waited so long for this day." He hugged them tightly. "Now you understand, love is greater than riches. I forgive you both." Rose ran out, smiling and crying at the same time. She hugged her brothers too. The whole family stood together for the first time, truly united, not by money, but by love. Peter watched from a distance, smiling proudly. Mr. Henry called him closer. "Peter, you are no longer my driver. You are part of this family now." Peter bowed his head humbly. "Thank you, sir. You taught us all what true love means." Weeks later, Mr. Henry threw a small dinner at the mansion, not to show wealth, but to celebrate forgiveness. The house was full of laughter again. No one talked about money anymore. Rose helped serve food, and Mr. Henry smiled peacefully. He raised his glass and said, "This is the happiest day of my life, not because I'm rich, but because I have my family back." Everyone clapped and laughed. It was not a house of billionaires anymore, it was a home of love. Moral lessons. Money can buy comfort, but not love. True love comes from the heart, not from riches. Greed destroys families. When we care only about what we can gain, we lose what really matters. Forgiveness is power. It heals hearts and brings people together. And that was how Mr. Henry, the billionaire who pretended to be sick, finally found what he was searching for, a family that learned the true meaning of love. Thanks for watching. See you on my next video. Bye.